Morning, everyone. Welcome to our 12th episode of Insights in Action with IB South Africa and Kantar AME. I know it is very cold, both in Joburg and Cape Town, with lots of thunder showers, but hope you're all safe and keeping warm. We're very excited about our session today and getting started. We're still letting a few people through the Zoom waiting room, but let's kick off, as I know we've all got a very busy day ahead of us, I'm sure. So yes, welcome to the Insights in Action. Thank you to all the publishers, agencies, brands, education houses and businesses that are on the line with us today. A note that the session is recorded, so you'll be able to share it with your colleagues afterwards, as well as the presentations. In fact, all the presentations are available on the Kantar website, and we'll share that with you in the thank you mailer after the session today. So yes, today is our 12th episode, and we're very excited about our subject today in continuation of our episodes in Women's Month. Speaking of Women's Month, a big thank you to Kantar for some incredible sessions, and also a very happy spring. We've got a fantastic opening to spring, right? With all this rain, hopefully lots of flowers and good things ahead for the summer. So today we are discussing the changing the narrative for good with the Unstereotype Alliance. And we're very excited to be hosting three very amazing humans with us this morning, very much leaders and experts in their industry. I'm going to do a longer introduction first, but just to let you know who we're talking with, we kick off with Lauren Governor, who's an account manager in the Insights division at Kantar South Africa. Lauren will kick off with an opening slide and video, and then we'll introduce a poll. Then Agnes Utangapiri, who's the Partnerships and Innovation Specialist at the United Nations Women, will be spending a bit of time with us explaining the Unstereotype Alliance, and we'll be chatting with her for a bit. And then Stacey Grant, who's the Consumer and Market Insights Director for Africa at Unilever, will be sharing some case studies on how these are applied, and we can hopefully take away some lessons there in our businesses. And then we'll end off with Lauren just capturing some fantastic stats that Karen Duchesne, who's the Chief Growth Officer, actually shared a bit on ENCA last week. So we're very excited to be having those stats in our own hands. And again, to let you know that we'll be sharing that presentation with you after the session. Before I properly introduce the speakers and just give you a little bit more information about them, I do want to just share some online etiquette. You will have noticed that as you came in, your mics will have been on mute, and that's really just to help control the sound and to make sure that everyone can enjoy the session and really capture those insights from our fantastic speakers. We also ask if you could switch your video off. I'm sure you all know that with Zoom, the bandwidth is controlled both on the up feed as well as the down feed. And having your videos off will really allow for a better quality for the presenters and the presentations. And then in terms of Q&A, please share them on the chat. It will be set as a private chat, but those will come straight to me, and I'll be sharing them with the speakers at the end of the session. So keep those questions coming throughout the talks, and then we'll have time at the end of the session at about 10:45 to ask our speakers the questions. So stay online to the end so that you can hear the answers there. Right, so introducing our three speakers, and if they can turn their videos on, that'd be fantastic. So Lauren Governor is, as I mentioned, account manager for the Insights division at Kantar South Africa. Lauren is passionate about people, understanding their behaviors and what drives them to make the decisions they make every day. I think I need to spend a bit more time with you, Lauren, get some insights there. Lauren has a master's degree in social sciences, focusing on social and psychological research, and started her career at Kantar with a legacy at Millward Brown shortly after. And she has worked at Kantar for 5 years and focused on the South African market while working on several projects across Africa to deliver impact to clients, which has been rooted in her love for research and insights. With a focus in her career on FMCG brands, Lauren has used her love of problem solving with her strength of paying attention to detail to generate actionable insights for brands to engage better and understand the citizens that they serve. Welcome, Lauren. We look forward to hearing from you in a bit. If you'd like to put your presentation up in the meantime while I introduce Stacey and Agnes, that'd be fantastic. Welcome, Agnes. You'll be speaking after Lauren. It's fantastic to have you here today. Agnes Utangapiri is the Partnerships and Innovation Specialist at the United Nations Women. Agnes has a long-term career with the United Nations spanning over 20 years in areas of partnerships, communications, gender equality, and empowerment of women. She has worked with various UN agencies like the United Nations Development Programme and consulted with the ILO South Africa on promotion of maternity protection for informal workers. And fantastic to see the news that Vodacom shared yesterday on their paternity for their workers, as well as the United Nations Fund Population Agency, ending of child managers in Malawi through traditional leaders. Agnes was part of the UN Observer Mission contingent to monitor the first South African democratic elections in 1994 and is a Sherry Blair Foundation mentee alumni 2016 and 2017. Just incredible. Welcome, Agnes. It's an absolute privilege to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us. And then Stacey Grant. Stacey is the Consumer and Market Insights Leader for Africa at Unilever. Also with an incredible CV here. Stacey leads the Africa Consumer Insights team and is a member of Unilever South Africa and Africa leadership teams. With over 15 years of Unilever experience, she is ultimately responsible for showing the business where and how to win through leveraging data and insights that ensures the business provides solutions to the unmet needs of the people across the continent. A strong believer in creative solutions, Stacey loves working in Africa, where daily challenges like scarcity of resources are enablers for innovative approaches. Stacey is a passionate advocate for diversity, believing that high performance is born out of nurturing and unlocking diversity of experiences, thinking, and skills. She fuels this passion as the sponsor for Unilever's Women Interactive Network in South Africa, as well as in her role of Unilever Unstereotype Alliance lead for South Africa. Welcome, Stacey. Fantastic. Wonderful to have you here. Right, with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lauren. Hopefully I have, you all set up. That's fantastic. Off we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paula, and welcome everyone to today's session on changing the advertising narrative. Today we'll be going through the relevance of stereotypes, introducing the Unstereotype Alliance, and looking at how Unilever actually addresses these and the current view on stereotypes in advertising. So what we'd like to do is start today off with a video about challenging our stereotypes and the stereotypes that we have today, even when we think we don't actually have these stereotypes.
As part of an experiment to explore the human mind, we asked 22 people to solve the same riddle and recorded their responses. Feel free to participate also. Are you ready?
The riddle. A father is about to bring his son to a job interview, applying for a position at a large stockbrokers company in the city. Just as they arrive at the company's parking lot, the son's phone rings. He looks at his father, who says, "Go ahead, answer it." The caller is the trading company CEO, who says, "Good luck, son, you've got this." Son ends the call and once again looks at his father, who is still next to him in their car. How is this possible?
He gets a call from the CEO, but it says,
"Good luck, son."
But he was next to him.
So it's not the father. I think it was probably an audio recording of his father.
Maybe he made it a demo tape.
Like he has two fathers?
This is a hard one.
Maybe it's a word joke, like it's
The grandfather of the son.
No, I think his name is Son.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just like an old man, calling a younger guy son.
I have no idea.
The answer. It's his mother.
Oh, that's so stupid. Yes, of course.
I should have thought of that, yes.
The CEO is a woman.
So I'm biased. In a sense. Is this about diversity and inclusion?
That's really mind-blowing, actually.
So I always thought that I'm not very sexist. But in spite of that, I think these subconscious biases are there in everyone's mind.
How much bias I still have in terms of thinking that the CEO needs to be a man.
Yeah,
I definitely was picturing a man.
They identify with males more than females these days.
Why can't women also be CEOs or doctors or, right?
When I think about a CEO or someone that's high positioned within a company, I mostly think of men.
And it's a shame, I think.
And that's so weird because I'm a CEO and I'm a woman. And I want to be a CEO. Why didn't I think about that? Crap.
I believe women can absolutely be CEOs, and that's definitely something that we should work on, especially when you're saying that so many people have been told this riddle and most people haven't gotten it.
Women make great CEOs and great leaders as well. And yet only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Let's change our mindset.
Perfect. So from that video, we can see that today, stereotypes are still very much alive in most of us. And we believe at Kantar that one of the key steps in actually addressing these stereotypes is through advertising, and brands actually have a key role to play in actually addressing these. Kantar's recent barometer study shows that South Africans believe that in the top 3 concerns that brands and companies should actually be addressing is addressing discrimination and opportunities limited based on things like gender, religion, disability, etc. We understand that gender is only one part of these stereotypes that happen all the time, but it's quite fitting that we're actually speaking about changing the narrative and changing the advertising narrative in September, when we've just actually passed Women's Month. Women's Month generally is known for addressing these issues, and then we forget about these issues all the time for the rest of the year. So it's a key step in actually going forward and addressing these biases that we have in advertising. So we'd like to now take you through a poll, just based on the video that we've actually just seen, and to see what did many of you actually think, who was the CEO. So if you can just complete that. Okay. I'd now like to hand over to Agnes, who will be taking us through the Unstereotype Alliance and the South African chapter.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can hear me? Hi, thank you. Thank you, Lauren. I can't see my screen. Let me just. Hi, Lauren.
Okay, Agnes, I can control it from my side. You can just tell me when to go next.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much, Paula. Thank you, Kantar, and thank you, IAB, for requesting us to come and share our insights on unstereotyping issues in the media industry and the advertising industry. And thank you, colleagues, for joining in. I know 9 o'clock is way too early to be tuning in, but we really appreciate your time and your attention for the next hour. So what is Unstereotype? People ask. Unstereotype actually was launched. Next slide, please. Unstereotype is basically a global alliance launched in 2017 in June at Cannes in France, and convened by the UN Women with global industry leaders such as Facebook, Unilever, Google, Mars, Microsoft, and JJ, IPG, and WPP. It's just a thought and action platform that seeks to eradicate harmful gender-based stereotypes in all media and advertising content. And if you know, UN Women is all about gender equality and empowerment of women. We are part of the United Nations and only formed in 2010. So this year in July, we just celebrated 10 years. And as you can imagine, the issue of gender equality is almost 250 years beyond us by the time we get to gender equality. So we really, as UN Women, try to seek partners in private sector, in the industry, that can really also get onto the issues of gender equality. We know we cannot do it alone, and hence probably launching things like the Unstereotype Alliance, He for She, and other programs that you probably have seen on our website. The Alliance brings together partners and seeks to collectively use the advertising industry as a force for good. And if you notice through our partnerships with the industries in this space, is basically to see how this is also championed within the organizations. The Alliance contributes to empowering women in all their diversity: race, class, age, ability, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, language, education, etc., and addressing harmful masculinities to help create a gender equal world. Next, Lauren. So what does Unstereotype members really get inspired to come and drive meaningful change? Why? Because we know for sure that stereotypes in ads are simply bad for business. It's critical to work in companies that look like the society that surrounds us. And we know for sure that diversified teams generate better ideas. And by doing our part, we can shape billions of narratives. And collective action is powerful, and we know that we can usher a new generation from bias and discrimination. We know we strongly believe we have the ability to change the world. Next, please. Why it matters. Why does it really matter? It's a business case for change. And we know that unstereotyping is not just a social imperative, but it is a business one as well. And research that has been done has shown that where brands have delivered progressive ads, they've been shown they've been associated with higher purchase intent or more for consumers and for women only. Kantar's study also has shown that more progressive advertising has 25% more impact and improved purchase by 18%. And 70% of all branding purchasing decisions are made by women, and 64% of all consumer spending, again, is controlled by women. 75% of women identify themselves as primary shopper for their households. And according to McKinsey, if a woman played identical roles to men in the labor force and employed and paid the same rate for the number of hours in the same industry sectors, it would add to almost trillions, or 26% to global GDP by 2025. This impact would roughly be equivalent to the size of the economies of combined China and US today. What distinguishes the Unstereotype Alliance? You're probably saying, why would we want to join? Why would we want to be associated with Unstereotype Alliance? In South Africa, this was launched in February this year with our key supporters that came on board. It's Unilever, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, sorry, Nando's. We also have other partners that are on board that are keen to support us. And why does it get very distinguished? It's a global in nature, so it's not just in South Africa, it's around the world. It's leveraging UN Women's global reach, working among 193 member states, combined with the reach of all members. It's action-oriented. Members commit to specific actions. We provide tools and are focused on measuring our progress in advertising and content members produce and in the internal business practices. It is beyond gender, addressing intersectionalities. It focuses on intersectionalities, including the intersection of race with gender, disability, and other forms of discrimination. We expect national chapters to tailor their efforts to issues relevant in their own context. And our guiding principles is collaboration is key. Members set aside competition in order to benefit from innovation and knowledge. The Alliance generates knowledge hub and encourages surfacing and adoption of purpose. And the principles of unstereotyping not only seeks to encourage and foster change, we seek to be the force for change. Therefore, all members must commit to a set of principles for developing progress and brand content. We are right there with you, offering toolkits, guides, and expertise. And below here are just some of the principles that we expect our members to enforce. So it's a global mission translated into the local context, globally consistent and locally relevant. In pursuit of our mission, we believe that the tangible impact will only come from a clear understanding of each local market and cultural nuances. And through the commitment of actions, brands and agencies, producers, advertising agencies, policymakers come together and agree on their own countries' advertising outputs from stereotyping. And some of these are some of the member benefits. Of course, it's use of the UA brand assets within standard guidelines, member name and logo on a UA website sponsor page, prominent recognitions in press releases, event and marketing, member name and logo on UA homepage, recognition in published research initiatives as UA champion, and some of our research tools, access to curated research and published best practices, participation in webinars, access to proprietary toolkits, and customized research opportunities. And then the engagement is invitation to UN-hosted UA conferences and events, nomination of leadership, discounted membership of affiliate organizations, eligibility to participate on a UA leadership, engagement in small group workshops, and annual UA champions reception and roundtable held at the UN. These are some of the tools that have been developed that are accessible to our members. I won't go through them, but we have all these events. And these are some of our existing products and tools that we have. WEPS, which is Women Empowerment Principles, Guide 2 exclusive for the Alliance, which we produced in 2019. Beyond Gender, produced in 2018. IPSOS and TFQ study, September 2018. Ads testing tools and stereotype metric in GAM 2019, and these other ones below. Next. So here is some of the investments that have gone into the tools that we've developed so far. Gender attitude study, a 10-country pilot study to look at gender norms and attitudes based on the 9 UN Women identified topic areas. And who was involved? Kantar, you'd be glad to know. AT&T, JJ, P&G, Unilever, and WPP. That was in 2018. Beyond Gender, the study was done in Brazil, India, and Turkey that illustrates how gender intersects with cultural context and other forms of discrimination. This was led by Unilever, conducted by Edelman Intelligence. IPSOS, 28-country study, measuring advertising and perceptions within the public, and then testing the gender equality measurement tool, and also the Unstereotype metric, Unstereotype advertising playbook, Unstereotyped workplace book, and a short film, The Problem is Not Seeing the Problem. So these are some of the tools that we have available for our members of UA. And the membership criteria to become and remain a member, I'm not going to go through them, but maybe you can just have a look at them. And we're really looking at increasing our membership. We have 9 members at the moment in South Africa, which is Unilever, Facebook Africa, Google South Africa, Nando's, we have the Loeries, we have Marketing Association of South Africa, the Advertising Regulatory Board, Aware.org, and I forgot 2 others, but we're hoping that our membership can go up to 15 by the end of 2020. And I think the more members we have, the more we can coordinate our work, the more we can coordinate in terms of having a space and a platform that really talks with one voice. So we're constantly looking for these opportunities, like thank you to Kantar and IIB and Stacy for inviting us to join this, this session, just to promote the Unstereotype Alliance. And I'll hand over to Stacy. Unilever is a member and a champion for what we do. So she'll be able to really be able to talk more about what does it mean for you to join or just be an ally. You can be a member and you can be an ally. You are all most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Agnes, and thank you, Paula, for inviting me and letting me be part of this session. I am just trying to switch my camera on. Okay, there we go. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So Paula did a very flattering introduction earlier, and I must say CMI Director for Unilever Africa is in small font at the bottom of the slide because it probably is one of my lesser roles. My boss isn't on the line, so he hasn't heard me say that. And I have many roles in life, and I must say that my most important role is being a mom to the two beautiful boys you can see on the screen now. One of the things that becoming a parent really has emphasized in my life is just the awareness of how pervasive something like gender bias is and how harmful stereotypes can actually be. And I must say, I don't think I fully appreciated that until I became a parent myself. So let's talk about unconscious bias. It's something that came up earlier in both what Agnes and Lauren shared, and it was also in the very provocative film that Lauren started with. And the reason why it's important is because I think we talk a lot about stereotypes, but actually what sits beneath stereotypes and what the root cause of stereotypes is probably unconscious bias. And biases are the product of life experiences, really. They condition the view that we have of ourselves, the view that we have of each other, and the view that we have of the world around us. So as we grow up and, given our parental experiences, our social experiences, the groups we socialize in, the schools that we go to, the television programs that we watch, all of that, unbeknownst to us, is feeding us signals as we grow up in the world, and that ultimately forms unconscious bias. So I really do believe it's not a bad thing unless you are completely oblivious to it. So it's very natural. It happens without us knowing it. It's very hard to stop it from happening, but it's up to all of us to really just be aware of it. So to bring it to life, what I want to do is run a bit of an experiment. So if you can all go to Google on your phones. Some of you might be on your phones already. I'm learning that one of the downsides of Zoom is distractions. But if you go onto Google on your phone and you go to the images tab and you type in professor, I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And then once you've typed in professor and you click search, have a look at what images pop up on your mobile phone screen. It's largely men, largely white men, and largely older white men. So why I wanted to run this experiment is to show you that unconscious bias is so pervasive that it even impacts something like Google's search algorithm. Thinking about the video that Lauren showed earlier with the CEO question, Google actually had to go in, and I'm actually really impressed that Google did this. But at one stage, if you typed in CEO into the search box, a very similar sort of older white male image would pop up, and Google decided they were going to shatter that stereotype. And so they adapted their algorithm to reflect something that was a lot more diverse and a lot more inclusive. So again, it just shows you need to be aware of these things so that you can start to change the narrative and the ideologies in society. So I am here to talk about Unilever and what Unilever is doing, as Paula said. But before I go to Unilever, what I want to do is start at home. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a mom to 2 beautiful boys. I have to say it's quite exhausting running around after them literally all day. But my favorite time of the day is bedtime story time with my boys. I also learned, though, quite quickly that something as seemingly harmless as a children's storybook can also be the place where harmful bias is formed. And what you can see on the screen are probably bedtime storybooks that many of you maybe grew up with, or maybe that you're reading to your children at the moment, or that your children might be reading. And if you really interrogate what you see on the screen, you can start to understand how bias is formed. So if you start with the sort of Disney storybooks, you know, the classic narrative is a princess waiting in a castle to be kissed or woken up or rescued. Again, sends a message around about women being helpless victims and kind of needing to be rescued by men. Hardy Boys, brilliant book. My oldest boy absolutely loves it, but very, very few female characters present in strong roles in that book. And then, of course, you've got Sweet Valley High, the Sweet Valley Twins. I grew up with them, absolutely loved them, but probably not the most progressive portrayal of women in society. And there was actually a study done that looked at 6,000 kids' books that were written between the 1900s and the year 2000. And what the study showed is that 31% of those books, of those 6,000 books, have females as the protagonists, as the lead characters in the books. So only 31%. And in animal books, interesting that number drops to 8%. Not quite sure why, but that's just a fact that came through. But it's not only the absence of females in lead roles that's an issue. It's also about how women are represented when they do appear. So as I've spoken about on this slide. And equally for male characters. So another interesting statistic that came through from that study is that villains in kids' books are 8 times more likely to be men. So what lessons are we teaching our children with these books? What bias and stereotypes are we forming by exposing children to these books without us even knowing it? Okay, I'm having a bit of issues changing the slide. Right, but then this happened. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. I knew it was too good to be true that I wasn't having any technical issues. There seems to be a delay. So when my slides eventually go back, there we go. Many of you might know who this is. Some of you might not know. This is Nancy Drew. Again, it's a storybook character that I grew up with. She was born in the 1930s as a character, which if you think about the gender equality journey for women, that's quite early in the journey, maybe even before the journey started. And what's really significant about her character as well is that she was raised by her dad. So not only did Nancy show young girls and myself that women can be strong, intelligent, adventurous, but Nancy Drew also showed men that they can be the primary caregivers to children. So maybe without knowing it, the author of Nancy Drew was shattering stereotypes, and that's quite significant. But this is really much bigger than gender, as Agnes spoke about. There's an intersectionality that's important. A person's identity really is multifaceted, and so should be looked at quite holistically when you consider stereotypes. And we see this in terms of a study of how women feel misunderstood in the media. Now we know at a high level that women mostly feel unfairly represented in society, but when you dig beneath that, it's especially Black women who more so feel misrepresented. And digging further beneath that, it's especially single Black women. So you start to understand the layers of stereotyping. And if you don't consider that intersectionality, unfortunately, what happens is some of those more holistic stereotypes start to become invisible. And why this is significant is the impact of getting this wrong is that what all of this bias and stereotypes does essentially is it starts to form a view of what society will expect from people. It starts to form a view of how people actually view themselves. So it can really be something that either holds people back or that pushes people forward if it's progressive enough. So it's a huge responsibility for us to get this right. And the reason why I shared the storybook example is because if something like children's storybooks can start to form bias and stereotypes, you can start to then understand the impact of advertising and why advertising and the media have such an important role to play here. So let's go to Unilever. I'm very proud that Unilever is a champion in the Unstereotype Alliance. And I'm very humbled actually daily by the work that we're doing to be more progressive and to challenge stereotypes in society. And the most commonly referenced example is Dove. So I will start there. And an insight that really fuels Dove's work is that 70% of women don't feel represented in media and in advertising. That's a huge number, 70%. So most of us on this call, when we watch advertising, we don't feel like it's accurately representing us. And that's significant because ultimately Dove believes that you can't be what you can't see. Okay, so if I'm not seeing women as CEOs, I'm not going to believe that I can be a CEO, and that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I probably then won't become a CEO. So advertising, we might belittle it, and we might think it's fairly insignificant in the bigger scheme of things, but that's how powerful it can be. And Dove really has a vision to create a world where beauty is a source of confidence and not a source of anxiety, which unfortunately traditional beauty representation is a form of anxiety for most women. Dove believes that beauty comes in many forms, shapes, sizes, and colors, and hopefully that's exactly what you see in Dove's advertising. And that's really the essence of Dove's real beauty position. So what you see on the next slide is every image here is of a real unphotoshopped, non-digitally modified woman. All of these visuals, which are part of the Dove Show Us campaign, are authentic, diverse representations of beauty. And why that matters is 8 out of 10 South African women want media and advertisers to do a better job in portraying diverse beauty. So that's, again, another insight that has fueled this work. And the Project Show Us campaign, which is up on the screen now, I think is a really beautiful step in the right direction. In partnership with Girl Gaze, which is a community of creatives from writers to to photographers and Getty Images, and ultimately in partnership with Real Women Everywhere, Dove has created the largest photo library ever created by women. So I think it's sitting at over, maybe more now, over 5,000 images, which really offer a more inclusive vision of beauty to all media and advertisers. So anybody on this call can sign up, can register with Getty Images and with Girl Gaze. And there is a small fee, but it's, because ultimately the photographers behind the work do need to be paid. But it's really affordable, and more importantly, just to have access to real beauty like this, which goes a long way towards unstereotyping, is quite powerful. So democratizing these images, I think, is a fantastic initiative by Dove and its partners as well. But as I said earlier, bias and stereotypes are equally harmful to men. So this isn't just a woman's plight. And so I wanted to bring a fresh lens into this conversation and end with this and talk about Dove Men plus Care. So something maybe that you're less familiar with. But the work on Dove Men has been really progressive as well in terms of shattering harmful male stereotypes. And the Men Plus Care campaign encourages men to show care ultimately because it takes strength to show care. So care is not a sign of weakness. Dove believes it's a sign of strength. And you know, having somebody like Sia Khaleesi as our brand ambassador is a great way to bring that to life. You can see the campaign here on the screen in terms of showing us how he's been caring for his little ones, especially during the lockdown. We also on the right, you know, we've been showcasing the stories of men and communities showing care in different ways. So you can see here you know, a man who is a community member and also is playing a key role in the medical service, which has been really important during the pandemic. And another issue is that of toxic masculinity. So again, sticking with men and harmful male stereotypes. And I love this example from Axe because it also shows the power of how a brand can transform if we really push ourselves to be more progressive. So those of you who know about Axe and know where the brand started, Axe probably used to be the poster child in many ways for chauvinism, although that was never the intent of the brand. If you think of you know, the old Axe advertising around Axe helping you get the girl and the mating game and kind of where we started, it probably wasn't the most progressive portrayal of men or women. But I think that this more recent work from Axe in terms of showing more diverse male representation and really starting to challenge the harmful toxic masculinity that exists in society today, I think is a great step forward for Axe. So in closing, as I said, I'm really humbled, really proud, really privileged to work in a company that is truly invested in shattering stereotypes. We're by no means perfect. We're on a journey, but we're trying, and I think that has to count for something. But it does, you know, what we've learned as Unilever is it takes tremendous courage to change the status quo. It takes courage to transform a brand identity so that it does become a force for good in society. And as Agnes said, what's really going to be the you know, the distinguishing factor to be able to create change here is critical mass. And that's why we're here today. That's why I'm delighted that Paula created this platform for us, because we need more partners on board. We need critical mass in society to really start to unstereotype and be a force for good. So please join us, please sign up, please do your bit to create the world that we want to see. Back to you, Lauren.
Perfect, thanks, Stacey. So what I'm going to go through now is a view of women in advertising within South Africa. Let me just move my screen. There we go. And just look at some statistics as well in terms of why it's so important. So almost 53% of the population in South Africa is actually female, and 48% of South African GDP is actually contributed by women, despite earning 27% less than men. Therefore, it's extremely important for us to understand how women are portrayed, how are they represented within advertising. So if we look at the industry and their perceptions of what's actually being designed and represented on our advertising, they do think that they are actively designing and representing both of these genders, but female marketers are less convinced about male portrayals. So in order to unpack this a little bit further, today we'll be looking at 3 dimensions. So which categories target women? Are women actually represented? And if they are, how are they actually being portrayed? And so to start off, unpacking which categories actually target women, and in essence, understanding our targets and the decision makers within categories. We can see that across most categories, there's equality in decision makers. Therefore, we should not be choosing whether we target males or females, but rather both genders actually should be represented. And this should be reflected in our media plans, our creative content, and our actual creative testing, because when we test our creatives, we actually target a specific audience. So we looked at the Kantar database of creative testing. And what we're seeing is that household, grocery, and personal care ads are largely actually tested against females, while the alcohol categories actually largely skew towards testing towards males. So thus, perpetuating these stereotypes, we're targeting and we're testing creatives against stereotypical decision makers within the categories. So it poses the question, do men not do grocery and personal care shopping? And do females not drink beers and ciders? And so we need to think about how we're actually representing these and understanding our targets and showing that we truly understand them. So we now know who we're targeting within these categories. So it's important for us to understand, do actually women get fair representation, and who are we actually seeing in ads? So when looking at all brand ads launched in Q4 2019, what we're seeing is that there's quite a fair representation between males and females within ads. However, just being present within ads, that's just, in this isolated quarter, is not enough. We need to be present in ads that will have an impact, be remembered, and are highly visible. And so therefore what we've done is we've looked at the Kantar's 20 best liked ads in 2019 to see, is there a skew in female and male representation? And what we can see is that there is a large male skew in those top 20 ads in 2019. And just showing the favor and the more male dominance within that. So it leads us to question, is this a common thread? And actually it isn't. So it seems like 2019 was an anomaly year. And this is when we compare against 2018, we can see that 2018 actually has a much fairer representation again. So why was 2019 such an anomaly? And primarily actually because 2019 was when we hosted the Rugby World Cup. And so we had a lot of advertising around rugby and themed rugby ads. And when we look at those ads that actually featured in the top 20 in 2019, we can see that they were actually all male dominated. So again, thinking about, is this perpetuating a stereotype that females don't actually watch sport and females don't watch rugby? And also in those top 20 were a lot of beer and cider ads that also happened and occurred during sporting events. And you can see that that's also being skewed there by male dominated advertising. So perpetuating the stereotype once again, females don't drink beer. Across both years, we can see that there aren't really many female leads in car advertising, another stereotype there, and that actually QSR, so quick service restaurant advertising, is actually generally heavier towards males. And so what we can see from all of this is it appears that ads that appear in this top 20 actually actively perpetuate stereotypes. But it's not to say that an ad can't be best liked and cannot be number one without actually stereotyping. So Sasol is a great example and the perfect example of a category that typically would be geared towards stereotyping, actually unstereotyping, and being the best liked ad in 2019. I'm not sure if many of you have actually seen this ad, but this ad is great. It has this little girl who's really the main character of the ad. And you can see that with her little petrol dispenser, she actually empowers and makes everything better with her power. And so you can see that you can actually create great stories that are best liked, will have a great impact, and are breaking the stereotype of being a male dominated, within the male dominated space. And so now that we know that women can actually be depicted unstereotypically, let's unpack other examples of how women are being actually portrayed and perceived in the media. So South Africans' views on the portrayals of advertising is a bit more nuanced than global consumers. And what we're seeing is that women in South Africa think that 60% of ads make us think highly of the woman being portrayed in the ad itself. So at first glance, that seems quite high, 60%, we're over the halfway mark. However, if we turn that on its head a little bit, it means that 40% of women aren't entirely convinced that we're portraying women in a way that makes us think highly of them. It also means that over a third of women believe that we're showing women in an inappropriate manner, and almost half of women do not entirely agree that we're creating ads that are unstereotypical. So very, very troubling statistics there. And if we look at the analysis of the Cannes ads, and obviously the best of the best advertising, we see in those ads, men actually speak 7 times more than women. Men get about 4 times as much screen time as women, and men are 62% more likely to be shown as smart. Therefore, encouraging the stereotype and having male dominate the screens. The key concern for us here is that the industry thinks that they're getting it right, and they're doing a really good job at being progressive. But they're actually not being progressive, and not being progressive in this space means that we're actually perpetuating and reinforcing harmful gender stereotypes. That's really important for us to be addressing here in South Africa today. And that's not to say that there aren't examples of really great advertising that are progressive. There is. And one brand that does this really well in both 2018 and 2019 is actually Nike. So Nike has 2 edits, and in 2018, the Caster Semenya one won 2nd place in the top liked ads. And in 2019, the Nike Dream Crazier Serena Williams ad actually scored in 8th place. Both of these are examples of great advertising that breaks the stereotypes, that encourages women to be who they are, and just breaking the boundaries that society has created for us. Dream Crazy is an example of an ad that brings inspiration. It's an award-winning story. It's a great story, and it's an empowering story, and it's an inspiring one that also wins awards. So we can actually create really, really great advertising that goes above and beyond. And what we're seeing in society today is that, yes, we do have some of these ads, but it's not the norm that we actually have a lot of empowering women on screen. We're seeing empowering women, businesswomen, entrepreneurs, and women in position of power in the workplace actually being hidden on platforms like digital and print, and not actually having these translate onto TV, which is a little bit of a problem for us. And it's a challenge for all of us to be brave and let these campaigns shine through TV. TV today still has the biggest reach in South Africa, and it's important for us to actually be brave and let these translate onto TV. We won't have enough time today, but there is a link to this video at the end of this presentation and this recording that you guys can all click on. And I encourage you all to be brave, and let's break the stereotypes in our advertising. And let's just tell great stories that actually have a great role to play in South Africa today, and actually is a good role model for all little girls and even boys growing up, so they can see strong, powerful women in advertising. Okay, and I'll hand over to you, Paula.
Thanks so much, Lauren, and to Stacey and Agnes. What a powerful session, and so wonderful to see both the statistics and the application, and then sort of what next, what to do, how can I participate, how can I learn. So just a huge thank you, and it's just great to see the chat come alive with a couple of sort of questions and actually just observations. So we know, for one, that inclusivity obviously includes more than just gender in terms of all the intersectional points. And even with regards to gender, male and female being quite sort of precise, and actually there's a whole spectrum of inclusivity to garner there, but super to see, the insights that you've shared today. And there was a comment about maybe some of, how many men are on the line, and this is such an important message. And I just wanted to do a shout out to the She Says Cape Town team. I know Kantar was involved with their gender sort of survey. And just a shout out to all the men that were involved and just kind of pushing the message further. So please do share this with all your colleagues. I think the more of us that understand the statistics and the insights that are based on those statistics, we'll be able to move the needle. So maybe just a question that has come up and maybe covered it. I know, Stacey, we had Leonie comment on the dad's care comment. I don't know if you just want to make a note. I shared it on our WhatsApp group. I don't know if you can get your, let me try and help you with your, have I asked to unmute? I think I just muted you, sorry. There.
No problem.
There we go.
Yes, I think, yeah, the comment was dad's care. If in a hashtag where it's all sort of single case letters, it can also read as dad scare, which is a good observation and completely unintentional. So I am going to give that feedback to the Dove team. I guess just by sort of using uppercase fonts with the D and the C in that hashtag, you can resolve it. But yeah, no, we definitely, it's not a dad scare message, it is a dad's care.
Thanks, so. That's great. And then maybe a question to the Kantar team before one for Agnes. You know, we are speaking very specifically to male and female gender types. Do the surveys or upcoming surveys start to cover a wider spectrum? How do you sort of look at that? Or could you share any insights there?
Yes, definitely. In the UN, we're very, very cautious about, you know, identity and diversity. So definitely we are having studies that are showing that non-binary people that don't want to associate with either gender, that is being taken into consideration. We're very, very conscious about that, yeah. So it's not, when we talk gender, it's not really men and women per se. It's all genders, whether you identify, you don't identify, it's all part of what we try to track. But definitely it's a good question. And as we start making the stats, especially in the advertising industry as well, I think the next studies is just for us to be more, you know, like more deliberate in terms of, you know, let's not talk about men and women, but let's also bring in the stats of and people don't want to identify with either gender.
And Agnes, thank you. That beautiful toolkit that you shared with us with all the studies and the research that the Unstereotype Alliance has done with your members, and a big thank you to the members, because that's what makes it possible with you. Is that research and those toolkits, are they available to non-members, or is it for members? How does that work?
Just for members. Okay. Because if you saw the amount of money spent on those studies, you saw that last column. I didn't want to go to it, and then, you know, but definitely if people become members, those studies are available, the toolkits are available. So yeah, so I think that's why there's an advantage of becoming a member, because you've got access to all these, you know, on-point stats that just don't cover South Africa, but globally.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I see
we're looking forward to new members from this platform.
Fantastic. Yes, the IAB looks forward to helping to drive that forward. We can't manage what we can't measure, and I think this is a fantastic way for us to see how to make those changes. And I think, you know, just Stacey, to your point, as we close off, I think, you know, some of these feel like really big movements, and sometimes one feels like, where do I start? And I think, you know, when you commenced your presentation with, you know, your two boys and starting at home, and what are we reading to our children? What do we have in our home? How do we manage it right from the start, personally, out into our professional lives? I think it's just such an important message. So thank you for that as well. Before we close off, would our speakers, to Lauren, Agnes and Stacey, is there anything you'd like to share before we close off? Just an opportunity if you would like.
For me, just to say thank you for people's time. Thank you so much for the listeners, and pity we couldn't see their faces, but thank you. And thank you, Paula, so much for inviting us.
Okay, thanks, Agnes. Well, thank you. It is 10 o'clock. We have run out of time. We'll be certain to cover the one or two questions that we weren't able to answer privately with your email addresses. And then all the content will be shared in the thank you mailer and on YouTube in terms of the Zoom webinar video. Also, a big shout out to the Kantar team and all of those working behind the scenes. And Roberts, thank you so much for helping to put together today. Karen Duchesne, thank you so much for being the brains and the creative actually behind all these fantastic sessions. And to Lee Andrews, thank you so much for all your help. We work tirelessly to pull this together, so thank you. And we look forward to your articles that you share on the subject matter to help us have a quick study that goes alongside all this fantastic content. So I hope I haven't left anyone out, but just a huge thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks' time. You can register on the same link. It'll be included in the thank you mailer. Have a fantastic week, and yeah, wishing you safety and sanity. All right. Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye, Paula.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks, Lauren.